Welcome. Welcome to the online worship service here at First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church in Fort Worth, Texas. My name is Reverend Dr. Aija Duelm, and I am delighted to return here as your guest speaker. I am glad you are joining us for worship. We are Unitarian Universalists, and we gather for worship to remind ourselves of who we are and how we want to live. We gather here to stay connected to our dreams of love and justice and to one another. So let us begin by centering ourselves as your talented minister of music, pianist Misha Beresnev, plays the prelude. Our call to worship comes from words written by Jack Mendelson. Here, in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers. In the face of cynicism and darkness, brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here, we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us the nerve and grace the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that makes all things new. Come, let us worship together. Please join us for our opening hymn, Morning So Fair to See. And our song leader, hymn leader today is Andy Pierce.
Morning so fair to see, night veiled in mystery, glorious the earth and resplendent skies. Pilgrims we march along, singing our pilgrim song, as through an earthly paradise. Tall are the verdant trees, deep are the flashing seas, glorious each wonder the seasons bring. Brighter is faith's surmise, shining in pilgrim eyes, from which our waking spirits spring. Age after age we rise, 'neath the eternal skies, into the light from the shadowed past. Still shall our pilgrim song, buoyant and brave and strong, resound while life and mountains last.
We begin our time together by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our liberal faith. Today's reading is by Christine Robinson, written by Christine Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. The world grapples with misinformation and other myths, some of which endanger people's health and well-being. As Unitarian Universalists, if we are not careful, we too create and perpetuate myths. Today, I invite us to consider who we really are. Who are we as Unitarian Universalists? What have you discovered about this chosen faith? How do you continue to make meaning and find purpose in our Unitarian Universalist community? And what will those who come after say of us? What legacy are we creating? And please share your experiences and thoughts with one another to stay connected and as part of the exploration of our spiritual journeys. But now I invite you to ground ourselves in the covenant of this community. Please join me in reminding ourselves of the promise we give to each other. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Today's Time for All Ages come from Neil deGrasse Tyson work, which comes in Cosmology Today. And these are statements you may have heard or even told yourselves. And here you can see them on the slide. What comes up must come down. Sun is a yellow star. North Star is the brightest star in the sky. On a dark night, you can make out millions of stars. Total solar eclipses are rare. Sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Days get long in the summer and short in the winter. And moon comes out only at night. My question is, what do all of these statements have in common? And what they really do have in common is that they all are false. So following Neil deGrasse Tyson's insights, let me share some of them with you. What comes up must come down. That is true if you are a human here on the earth, but if there are golf balls in the space, that will never come back to the earth. Sun is a yellow star. In reality, sun is white. But we do not look at the sun directly when it is high up. It would blind us. And when we see sun rising or setting, there are other colors that are filtering through the atmosphere and create these wonderful scenes. If the sun really was yellow, then what color would snow be? And we all know that there are only a few places where snow is yellow. North Star is the brightest star in the sky. Well, it is not even in the top 10, not even in the top 20 or the top 40. North Star is the 49th brightest star in the sky. The next statement, on the dark night you can make out millions of stars. Well, actually thousands, not millions. Just try counting them. There are people who have tried to count them, and there are some astronomy hobbyists and people that absolutely love that, and they get to thousands. Total solar eclipses are rare. You probably have heard that in the newspapers that tend to report that there is this rare solar eclipse tonight. Well, it's not true statement. It's not that rare. Solar eclipses happen every 2 years. They happen more often in our presidential elections, but we do not hear newspapers report that this is a rare presidential election or the Olympic Games that are about to complete, and we don't say these are rare Olympic Games. The next statement, sun rises in the east and sets in the west. This statement is true only on 2 days of the year, and that is on equinoxes. All of the other days, sun rises and sets in a little bit other places than directly east and directly west. Days get long in the summer and short in the winter. And I wonder if you believed this before I'm sharing with you that there's something wrong about this state. So, which day is the longest, was the longest daylight? And it is June 21st. What else is this day? It is the first day of summer. So if the first day of summer is the longest, then every next day must be shorter. And what is the shortest day, the daylight shortest day of the year? And it is December 21st. And what else is December 21st? The first day of the winter. So every next day in winter is getting longer. And the last one, moon comes out only at night. Well, it does come out also in a daytime. We're just not paying that much attention to it. As you see, it is very easy to create a myth, to say and believe things that are not true. And the more we learn, the more we expose these untruths. So let's join in the hymn, which is 158, Praise the Source of Faith and Learning.
Praise the source of faith and learning that has sparked and stoked the mind with
reading, the first reading today, comes from Eleanor Wilner's book, Otherwise, and it is an excerpt from a poem. Those who come after will never say of us what wonderful myth they had. There will never rise dripping from our midst figures whose wings open dry in the sun, completed by being more us than ourselves. What we leave is all that can be dredged up from wrecked harbors, history's debris. So in the end, it is not the beautiful figures draped in the white silk togas of dream, nor the animal gods with the eyes of hawks and the delicate fingers of girls. No, only what broke in our hands when our voyages ended in the slow grip of possession, as the continent's shore is slowly swallowed by sea, making an infinite coastline, the in and out of an edge endlessly nibbled and gnawed. That is the line we leave behind us. But when they say of us what we have done, perhaps they will speak kindly of those who near the century's end pried open the hand. Perhaps they will say that there were those who took down the harps hung in the sorrowing trees, having lost the taste for conquest or revenge, and made a song that rose in the air as smoke rises. At first a line, and then slow eddies, then spirals endless, unwinding the sky's blue spool. When I was a child, I had books on Greek mythology. However, I never found myself fully fascinated by their stories. I struggled to keep track of so many names of gods and goddesses who sometimes lived on earth and engaged humans and sometimes had their own meetings of gods, at times somewhere else, not on earth. Some gods were powerful, others were rascals, like Sisyphus, who sometimes played tricks on the gods to get what he wanted, and in the end got punished by other gods and was left for the eternity to engage in a futile labor to roll up a rock on a hill, only to have it roll back to the bottom each time he got to the top. The myths, they seek to explain the way the world is set up and to answer the curiosity of the origin of things. How was the world made? Who was the first to do a certain thing? But by large, Greek mythology did not provide good answers to these questions in the day and age of my growing up. Things had changed. Our understandings of the world had changed. Our faith tradition comes from Christianity. And you may be familiar with Christianity's sacred source, the Bible. And the Bible, too, is full of mythological worldview and mythological thinking. If you read these stories literally, you will find the world described as having three stories: heaven up above, then earth in the middle, and hell down below. Then there are stories telling of supernatural powers that intervene and as a result cause miracles. And then, of course, the world described there supposed to come to an end with the apocalypse that will replace the existing world was a supernatural world? Well, it was Lutheran theologian Rudolf Bultmann who deeply influenced and shaped liberal Christian theology through his work on demythologizing the Bible. And I think it is important for us to know other scholars outside of our UU scholars. Bultmann was a German minister, a scholar. He was a member of the Confessing Church that opposed Nazi's regime. And what he argued in his work was that our ancestors could take comfort in their mythological beliefs about life after death, about miracles and guardian angels, but the modern scientific people can't. Influenced by Heidegger's existentialism, Bultmann goes on to say that our existence in this scientific modern world is more distressing because the control of life and its events are placed in the hands of humans and not gods or goddesses. And we know well that we do not often feel in control of our life events. And that is why some people return to myths which are at odds with modern scientific world we live in. With the Delta variant spreading with rapid speed and in several places infecting record number of people daily since the even pandemic began, it is heartbreaking to hear officials refusing to follow CDC guidelines and then take the side of those who have bought into conspiracy theories and discount science and reason. Wherever you go outside of the liberal bubble, you will hear people talking about vaccines containing chips and causing harm, about masks being an invasion of personal freedom and liberties, about COVID numbers, including deaths, being exaggerated. And that will come even from folks who have found themselves in the ICU with COVID infection. Why these myths? Why do they have so much power? And is there something unique to our time to have these myths? As you know, this pandemic is not the first in the world history. And there have been many before it. The last one in 1918, flu pandemic, turned the world upside down. And then, just like now, dangerous misconceptions and conspiracy theories emerged. One of them proposed that pharmaceutical companies intentionally spread disease so that they could sell their products. And in 1918, this conspiracy theory was surrounding German pharmaceutical company Bayer, who introduced aspirin. The mistrust of German products was not strange at the time, because it was the time of World War I, the end of it, where the US and Germany had fought as enemies. But indeed, some later research found that aspirin did contribute to overall pandemic mortality because doctors were prescribing dosages that were too high. Now we know those as potentially toxic levels. Another rumor that you may have heard is that COVID virus was created in and leaked from a lab in China, even though the research indicates that its nature is actually natural in origin. But this myth is not a far cry from the myth about the origin of influenza of the 1918. Again, due to the war, a rumor suggested that influenza virus was spread around by the world by Germans. with their submarines. There were similar stories about German boats coming ashore to the east coast of the U.S. and releasing infectious agent into the atmosphere. According to an account by Gina Colada in her book, a woman claimed to have seen a toxic cloud spreading over Boston as a camouflaged German ship drew close to the harbor. And the Germans had snuck into the city carrying vials of germs and proceeded to release them in theaters and at rallies. Also, when it comes to the xenophobic terms that we heard earlier last year, referring to COVID as China or Wuhan virus, such naming is not new as well. In 1918, the flu was often called the Spanish flu, even though it did not originate in Spain. Again, the war was going on, but Spain was a neutral country. And while other countries were politically restrained in their reporting on war events, the press in Spain had much more freedom, and they did not lump the death from influenza with other military casualties. And in fact, in Spain, the influenza was called the French flu, or the Naples soldier. In Brazil, it was called the German flu. In Poland, it was the Bolshevik disease. And in Senegal, it was the Brazilian flu. The researchers have found that there are several reasons why people believe these conspiracy theories. And it might help us to understand why also today those are popular. These reasons are epistemic, existential, or social in nature. People are motivated by the need to have causal explanations in order to regain some sense of certainty in the world, to regain control, and to maintain positive image of oneself. While our senses of certainty, control, and belonging can be jeopardized in crisis situation, buying into conspiracy theories and myths does more harm than good, damaging public health and social well-being. Those who come after will not say of us what wonderful myth they had, Eleanor Wilner says in her poem. But then when they say of us what we have done, perhaps they will speak kindly of those who pried open the hand. Perhaps they will say that there were those who took down the harps hung in the sorrowing trees and made a song. How about that for a legacy for us, Unitarian Universalists? We will pause here to hold one another in care and support. Take down the harps in the sorrow tree and make some songs. We pause to extend our love to one another, lifting up joys and concerns of our lives, and extending waves of compassion to those who are experiencing pain and sorrow. People who are struggling with fires going around all the world. People who are struggling still due to COVID, physically, health-wise, as well as financially and just psychologically and mentally as well. We'll lift them up. And let's take a moment to pray, meditate, or just practice silence if that is your preferred practice. If you feel comfortable, you may close your eyes or just let them rest. Breathe with me. With every breath, breathe in the spirit of this community and breathe out peace. Breathe in compassion and breathe out love. Breathe in strength and breathe out commitment. Commitment to keep going, to continue to care, to fight for justice, to practice this faith and its call. And to this, we add the silent prayers of our hearts. Our second reading comes from an excerpt written by Meg Barnhouse called "Who Says Unitarian Universalism's Principles Are Easy?" People talk sometimes about liberal religion as if it is a thin gruel, watered down to please everyone. Our 7 principles, they complain, are either too much like a creed or so general as to be meaningless. my experience of the principles is that they are deeply demanding. The first one asks me to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, which means that I can no longer subscribe to the cheerful Calvinist doctrine of the total depravity of human nature. Now I have to struggle with the worth and dignity of people who do unspeakable, awful things. Whereas the doctrine of total depravity made that one a no-brainer. The UU principles are demanding enough to make me whine. For those who feel they are thin gruel, I have a suggestion. Let's stick something onto the end of every principle that will stop people from smiling and nodding comfortably as they read. How about attaching beginning in our homes and congregations? Then we'd be faced with affirming things like peace, liberty, and justice for all, beginning in our homes and congregations. Everyone who has raised children knows that peace is often at odds with liberty and that justice demands a disturbance of the peace. To put those three together in one principle is outrageous and lovely. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, beginning in our homes and congregations, is a sobering ideal. I don't know about you, but I have sat in meetings about right relations and seen people get testy with one another. Lao Tse, quoted in our hymnal, says, "Peace in the world begins with peace in the home, which begins with peace in the heart." If I start with my own heart, the demands of our principles get even heavier. Peace and compassion in my heart, justice too, affirming the worth of every person all the time, and not only with my words, but also with my behavior in my secret hearts. If we added in the heart to the principles, they might as well just say, "Be Jesus and be done with it." I'm sorry I even brought it up. For me, the heart of the liberal faith is to be connected to something greater than yourself, to wallow in the spirit of life, love, and truth, to have fair trade coffee and important conversations, to take the side of love and stand against quibbling, complaining, and flouncing off in a huff, to move toward being in right relationship with ourselves, one another, and the planet. For me, this faith isn't a thin gruel. It's not even a rich and hearty gruel. It's walnuts and bananas and pancakes and mangoes, arugula, ginger, and avocado. The feast is prepared with effort, enjoyment, persistence, and commitment. Here to join me. In this second reflection, I want us to consider our own faith and lift up a few misconceptions that circulate around. If myth can be harmful, as we are seeing it in our world today, it might be important to look at our own myth, even if it might be slightly uncomfortable to question our own faith. As Meg Barnhouse claims, to be a Unitarian Universalist is not easy. For some of us, it has been the most freeing of experiences, and yet, I think you will agree that this faith also puts on us certain expectations and responsibilities that are not simple and light. Who are we? What is our religious identity really about? I think you will not be surprised if I say that there are myths and half-truths about us. And that comes from those who have heard, even from those who have heard of such a thing as Unitarian Universalism. Sometimes from those who join UU communities and then claim to be UUs themselves. Are you wondering what I'm talking about? Well, have you heard such statements as, a UU can believe anything you want? That UUs are all about the intellect? That individualism is at the center of UUism, and you do not really have to attend a church to be, or be part of any community to be a UU? Well, these statements are really not true. There are other myths, and if you would like to read more, you can look up Erica Hewitt's sermon on myth busting, or Reverend Fred Hammond's debunking of 5 myths in his sermon, Identity Crisis. But let's look at these 3 myths that I mentioned earlier. The first one, the worship of individualism and no need to be a part of a community. There is no doubt that we do believe in high human agency. Through our theological developments, we shifted away from Calvinist view of total depravity of humans and instead affirm the dignity and worth of every being. We value our personal freedom and choice, and we seek to make sure that every person has a say. And yet, as this pandemic has showed more and more, we are linked to one another. We are interconnected with the web of all existence, and we do not hold our freedom above someone else's. As Krista Taves explains beautifully, although we promote freedom, it is not freedom at all costs. This is not a religion for lone rangers. This is a religion for lovers of freedom who are called into community, because in community we are held accountable for the consequences of our beliefs. This year, we have not been able to see one another as often as we had wanted due to COVID, and it has created a toll. Even in the day and age of technological advances that allow us to connect with one another through the webs, many feel disconnected. We miss personal contact. We miss sharing meals together. We miss singing together. We need one another. We need one another for support and to challenge ourselves through the relationships and community engagement. Because how else would we live into our values if we did not have the support and encouragement of one another? The myth number 2, Unitarian Universalism is a religion of intellect And just to be sure, many of us enjoy listening to sermons that tickle our minds, allow us to learn new things, and challenge our thinking. And this worship reflection just might be one of my more intellectual sermons. Ralph Waldo Emerson's attack on his Unitarian colleagues in 1838, who offered corpse-cold religion, might still seem relevant today. But I invite you to think back to why you chose this faith. Why did you choose to stay with it? And if I'm right, you will say that it was because this faith offered something meaningful that transformed your life. It touched your heart, your soul, your very inner being of who you are. And that is the purpose of our faith. That is the purpose of our congregations. That is the purpose of First Jeff, to transform lives towards more meaning, more freedom, more spiritual growth. And the last myth, the number 3, you can believe anything you want. When an outsider asks, what do you use believe? It's kind of like a tricky question. The short answer that you can believe whatever you want, as well intended as it may be, is simply not true. As I mentioned earlier, we treat our freedom with responsibility, and we will give it up. We will give up those beliefs that are harmful or unjust. Our meaning-making must not happen at the expense of others. As Reverend Dan Harper says, you cannot believe anything you want. You must believe with all your heart and soul and mind that love can transform the world. And this is why, contrary to the popular belief, says Dan Harper, it is not easy to be Unitarian Universalist. If you are a Unitarian Universalist, you will care deeply about making this world a better place for all persons, to the point where you devote your whole life to that end. Unquote. So yes, this faith is not easy, but oh my, it is powerful, liberating, meaningful, and beautiful. It is a feast, as Meg Barnhouse said, feast prepared with effort, joy, persistence, and commitment, and it continues to grow and evolve and change as we all journey together. I am glad you are part of it. And I hope that you will continue to find meaning and purpose in this faith and will choose to keep going on with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. Please join in our closing hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes. blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, and our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place.
As we extinguish the flame of our chalice, we carry on its call to seek the truth, to question our convictions for beliefs that might limit our openness and work for justice, to foster closer relationships and trust so that in this small corner in Texas, we connect and reconnect with one another. As we go forth, the benediction words by Jane Malden. Now may the love of truth guide you, the warmth of love hold you, and the spirit of peace bless you this day and in the days to come. Amen.